Good day, everyone. My name is Sandy Honigsberg, and my area of expertise and responsibility are goals, performance, and compensation. And I'll try to present it to you in the according to what I would typically consider to be an annual cycle. Before we actually get into the actual improvements or the new release features, I have to point out a couple of impending terminations or death notices. The first one is Goal Management version 11. Which they've actually moved up the end of life on that one. And I have to tell you, frankly, that there's absolutely no reason, as it points out here in the first bullet, there's no configuration required, and therefore I can only suggest that you do this at your convenience rather than wait for it to happen automatically, because then you could end up having it happen in the middle of an operational cycle. So I suggest to you that you do it as soon as possible. Before you get to your end of year or beginning of year when you start your new goal creations. Something that may affect a small number of people, but probably not too many, and that is the goal execution. The goal execution module, as you can see here, end of maintenance is planned for the end of 2018, and the product itself will be terminated at the end of 2019. Performance Management version 11. That one requires a little bit of thought, because obviously you have to move to version 12, version 12 accelerated to be specific. But version 12 accelerated, when you do that move from either version 11 or the old version 12 or the version 12 beta, there is configuration work that has to be done. So you want to plan this one out. You want to talk to your consultants and figure out exactly when you want that to happen. You've got, as you can see, the end of maintenance is planned for Q2 2018, but I suggest that you definitely plan to get your conversion in before the end of life, because you don't want that to happen automatically. You definitely want to get geared up for that one. And finally, this is a minor one, and that is that this particular function, the mass create form, which some people were using to generate their forms, is being terminated. It's being phased out. And the function that you're supposed to be using from here on in is the launch forms function. Okay, on to specifics about the new release, the new improvements on the release. If we talk about goal management, this is something that may not happen, that may not be particularly relevant to European clients, unless you have subsidiaries or subsidiary organizations in the Middle East or other places where they use right-to-left languages. If you do use right-to-left languages, then you can see that SuccessFactors has put in a number of improvements. Here you can see a list of 6 forms that have been upgraded so that they read properly from right to left, both in terms of the actual alphabet being used and also in terms of the alignment. We can go over that one fairly quickly, because you can see, for what it's worth, if you recognize it, then you can see that everything here is in fact geared from right to left, even though the data itself is still appearing in Latin characters. The instructions and all the screen prompts are in fact, in this particular case, they're in Hebrew, but it would apply just as easily for Arabic. Okay, note fixed features that you can see here. Features that were recognized were issues of cascading and sync, the PM sync, where people were doing cascading. There had been issues of PM sync not working properly. Those have now been resolved. And this last one here, the last bullet, refers to continuous performance management. We'll get to continuous performance management in a second, but what it refers to here, this particular function, is referring to the fact that via permissions, you can now control whether or not achievement feedback is available to the employee to read via his goal plan. All right. Until now, the person what you weren't able to control it by permissions, and now you can use permissions so that if the manager asks for feedback about the achievement, he'll see it, but the employee can be, but the permissions can be configured such that the employee himself will not be able to see it. Continuous performance management. This is a fairly new module in the SuccessFactors world, in the annual performance cycle, and SuccessFactors is investing heavily in it, and I can only suggest that you investigate it, because it has a lot of things, a lot of advantages to be had in terms of the annual performance cycle. I'm not getting into all that now. This isn't the forum for us, but what I want to talk about here specifically is some of the new advances that they've put in here. And the first one we're talking about here on this form is the fact that you're now able to link achievements directly to goals, and you can bypass the activity stage. And if you look here, perhaps it'll be easier if you look at this form here. What you're looking at here on this form is the subform where you're adding an achievement, and you notice that the activity window of the activity field is blank, but you're able to link the achievement directly to the goal. Now, in some environments, that's obviously advantageous because you want to be able to do it directly to the goal, because the achievement is what appears on the goal plan and on the performance form. On the other hand, if you do that, you're also short-circuiting the one-on-one discussion functionality, because the one-on-one meetings actually are based around the activity. So there's another feature that covers that one as well, and that's this feature here, which is, if you look at the header, it may not make that much sense. The goals drop down based on activity entity opt-in. And what it means basically, if you come back to this field, is that if you open up an achievement and you link it to an activity, and if that activity was already linked to a goal, then it'll flow through. So you have the full chain from achievement through the activity, and it'll automatically link the goal that was already linked to the activity. Okay, so that's something that you can. So you've now got two ways of getting goals linked to achievements, either directly by the activity or through the either directly through the achievement, or the goal is linked to the activity and the activity itself is linked to the achievement. Okay, this one here is actually useful. Here we're getting back to the one-on-one meetings. And what it talks about here is the ability of the system now applies timestamps for all the different comments that are made on the So when you're looking at your activities, okay, you can see here that this thing has been bounced back and forth between Maya to Jeff, and then Jeff added another comment. And in all cases, you can see a date there, which obviously makes it all that easier to track what the conversation sequence is like, especially as you can see in this example, you've gone from today back to July and back to October, so things have definitely been spread out over a period of time. This is a nice feature, and that is when you're looking at achievements, the achievements are now split. So if you're actually filtering by goals, okay, as opposed to filtering by time, if you filter by goals, then the system will split it out by operational or performance goals on the one side, or by development goals on the other side, so you can segregate those out. That's it as far as continuous performance management, other than, again, Rick, and my own personal recommendation that that all of you take a good hard look at introducing continuous performance management into your performance cycle. Now, if we're looking technically at the performance, at the V12 acceleration and some of the improvements that have happened there. The first one here talks about the team overview. And there were issues with Team Overview about a form that may have been sitting in the inbox of a person who was disabled, or deleted route steps, or deleted steps on route maps. In those particular cases, the Team Overview was having issues opening up. The fix is that they've resolved this so that if a form itself doesn't appear on the Team Overview, the overview itself will open, but the particular forms that that are sitting in the wrong places, or in this, the inboxes of disabled people, those forms will be skipped, but the actual overview itself will work. Okay. The other thing is, and again, the cleanup here again revolves around inactive users, as the ability to choose feedback, or when you want to choose a feedback, when you want to send a feedback request, the system will now filter out inactive users. So you can only send to people who are still alive and kicking within the system. This particular form, there's 3 bullets here, and it all talks about people who are those clients that have started using the APIs, or the programmed interface, in order to manipulate or to do things with their performance forms. And as you can see here, you can set the routing for a performance form, you can add objectives to a performance form, and you can also load competencies into an objective form. All 3 of those, okay, via use of the API element. All right, that's a programming tool. Now is certainly not the time to get into it, but it's a technical tool that's available to you now. And it can prove to be very helpful depending on what your requirements are. Other fixes, and these are a little bit smaller, is that behaviors, okay, there have been issues with behaviors not populating properly. That's been resolved. There were problems with text breaks, okay, and the other details tab. Those have been resolved. And the scale, the scale, when you're using the Easy Rater, the scale information with icon was missing, so that was resolved as well. Those are the lightweight ones. This particular one here on this form, the upper one, is of major importance, I think, because what it does, it cleans up a lot of the mess. It used to be that on the others ratings tab, the comments that were there sometimes appeared in a random order, and what they've done now is that they've set it up so that the comments will flow according to the route map. Okay, but please notice the note that applies here in the second half, which is that if the form, for whatever reason, gets routed forwards and backwards, then the order may get shifted. But all things being equal, if the form runs straight, then the order that the comments appear in the others tab will appear properly. This last point here has to do with people who are printing their PDF files, their forms, and the scroll bars have been removed so that you're no longer seeing extra stuff on the form. This next slide here that we're looking at here has to do with, and if there's a little bit of confusion, maybe a little bit of confusion here, it refers to mass create form. And just a few minutes ago, I told you that the mass create form function was being retired, and it is being retired. If you look down here at the bottom, the prerequisite for this function being enabled in the first place is by using launch forms. And what it's talking about is when you use the launch form function, you could be launching forms for a small group of people, or you could be launching, company-wide. In which case you could have 1,000 or several thousand forms being generated at one time, and that can take a long time, and it's run as a background process. What this does, this job summary allows you to do is track what that offline process is doing, so you can see if things are running, or you can see if it's stuck, and if it's stuck, you can try to track down why. Okay, moving on to calibration. Calibration itself, there were a couple of interesting things that happened with calibration. First and foremost is the user interface. The user interface, like everything else in SuccessFactors, is being upgraded to the Fiori standard, which means that things will now look the way you see them. Okay, it used to be that this dashboard used to run the columns used to be columns that ran from the bottom up. They now run from left to right. The information is the same. It's just the layout that's different. And there's something new that gets involved here, and I'm drawing your attention to it here, and that is gender summaries. All right, the system is now able to give you gender summaries, as you can see here. I don't know if you can read it, but the light blue line at the top there is male, then followed by female, both the absolute number and percentage, and also others. So you've got three categories there of for the gender summary, and we'll talk about where that comes up in just a minute. You can see here again, how the calibration. This is just another sample of what the bins look like using the Fiori standard. And I mentioned the emphasis here on the Fiori standard is the fact that everything, the standard or the old user interface, is being phased out. As you can see here, the legacy UI, the phase out is planned for August 2018. So again, it's a good idea to actually do the conversion and hit the switch so that the Fiori is applied in calibration as well, and do it when it suits you, so that if there's any training involved, you can do it rather than having it happen automatically in the middle of a cycle. Now, this particular thing, I pointed out to you the gender statistics here, and this has to do with what it calls business beyond bias, which you can see here, this abbreviation, the BBB, and you can present it three ways. You can present it photos only, name only, or photos and names. And what it does is it allows you, and I think this is primarily an American thing, though it may apply in the European community as well, it has to do with making sure that we're dealing with sexual bias. And what you're looking at here, these are the three formats. You can see it, picture only, picture, name, or no picture. But what I wanted to point out to you is this. If you look down here, remember the light blue was male and the dark number was the female, and there's the others. Okay? In this particular case, you've got under the high category of the calibration, we have 38 people. 15 of those 38 are male, there's your percentage. 19 of those 38 are female, and there's a percentage. And this gives you an extra tool so that if you're ever challenged on gender bias, you'll be able to actually go back and say, here's where we are, and of course you can take preventive steps while you're at it. And now, on to compensation, which is my other hat. And this particular improvement here that we're talking about, to me, is one of the best things they've done in a long time, and that is the ability to expand or contract sections on the compensation field. You've still got the ability, that they put in several quarters ago, where you could go on to where you could select columns and hide them or expose them as you wanted to. but that always involved leaving the form, hitting the thing, choosing which one you wanted, and then having to go back into it to bring it up again. What you're able to do now is use these, you see the arrows there, and what you see here is current employee information. You can see the header, and the system will show you, will expose always at least one field of the section. All you have to do is click on that arrow, and then it expands the form, and you see all the fields that are attached with it. And you can expand or contract any section, each section independently at any point in time, and you can free up or zoom in on the information that you need in order to make the decisions that you need to make. You, the planner, obviously. The next thing is the budget form, or the budget. It now comes up as a floating bubble. Okay, so if you're looking at the budget, you can expose the budget, but at the same time you can keep it live, but you can actually move it from place to place on the screen in order to free up the information so that it's not covering up the information that you actually need to perform your planning function. And it applies both at the planner level or on the executive review form equally. This function that we're looking at here is available exclusively via executive review, and what it does is it allows an executive reviewer who's been permissioned for it to perform mass updates to the system. So instead of running through one feed, one person at a time, you can perform sort of a mass update. In this particular example, we're looking at a person who wants to increase the promotion amounts for a particular population by a total of $100,000. Okay, and notice here, and this is important here before people start jumping, is the ability to do a preview. If you look here at this form, at this slide here, you'll see that it's a three-step process. The first thing you do is you filter for the employees that you want to see, that you want to be relevant for. Then you choose the component that you want to adjust, be it up or down. And what you do, once you choose those people, you choose the amount. The system will proportionately allocate that amount, either up or down, as an increase or a decrease. And then you can do the preview to see what those changes are, make sure that it actually worked the way you wanted it to, and then you can commit those changes to the database. And that saves you the effort of what people are probably doing now, which is exporting to Excel and then doing the exchanges there and then bringing it back in again. So you can do all of that now via the system, directly through the system. Another neat little feature here is the ability to add filter fields for the executive review. This particular slide is relevant only for people who have their compensation linked to Employee Central. If you're linked to Employee Central, then one of the advantages you have, of course, in addition to being able to draw your information directly from Employee Central, is also the ability to move that information or the decisions you've made in compensation directly back into the employee's compensation elements. And with this, and with the addition of the new function they've added in here, is that the effective date and event reasons can be set here, and it's all part of the user interface. Okay, this is a light one, but it could be important to you, and that is it allows you to set the format for numbers. You no longer have to go to support and or to your third-party service provider, but you can actually use admin tools to set the number formats for extra significant digits on percentages, on currencies, etc. This slide here points out the fact is that employees will have access, if you've upgraded to the PP3 user interface, you can still allow, based on permissions, you can still allow employees and or managers to view their compensation statement via the new interface as well. Rewards and recognition, also known as spot bonus. This has to do specifically for those countries where you had very low valued currencies. In this particular slide, you can see they used South Korea. I believe India may also have that, where significant numbers require, you just need a bigger number to be able to put it in. The field had been limited to 6 characters, and that simply wasn't enough. As you can see in the bottom slide, they've expanded the field so you can put in as many digits as you want. There's a significant number of digits, so there's no problem there as far as the values go. Couple of small items, and that is the pagination. Okay, if you've only got 5 people on your form, then it'll no longer say page 1. They've got rid of that. They've moved the buttons over to the right-hand side of the form. Okay. This is a nice one, and that is on-the-spot bonuses, okay, rewards and recognition. You can put, you're no longer limited only to monetary items, but you can also use non-monetary items such as, options or stocks, etc. This has to do primarily, typically with Americans, if your employee, is that if you set the system to overflow the extra money, if an employee has reached the upper limit of his range, and you've given him too much money, then you can configure the system to put the overflow into the lump sum. And what they've done, they've improved it or they've fixed it so that the warning will appear upon save or when you route it to the next step. The footer that had been showing up on the PDF file, if you're looking at the compensation statement, if you have a one-page form, then the footer has been removed, so you no longer have to deal with it. That brings me to the end of the Reader's Digest version of the performance improvements I wanted to share with you. I wish you all a good day.